Ladies and gentlemen, relationships are among the most significant aspects of our lives, yet they are often the most misunderstood. Many wonder, why would a man leave a woman who cares deeply for him? The answer lies not in the surface, but in the depths of the heart, mind, and purpose. Let us explore this together and uncover truths that reveal not only the dynamics of relationships, but the essence of human connection. Purpose is the driving force behind every individual. It is the compass that guides a man's decisions, actions, and direction in life. When a man enters a relationship, he brings with him his sense of purpose, his reason for being, his assignment, and the vision that fuels his existence. If a woman does not understand or align with that purpose, tension often arises. It is not because he does not value her care or affection, but because purpose is so intrinsic to his identity that anything misaligned with it feels like a hindrance rather than a help. A man's purpose shapes his priorities, and it determines the kind of partner he feels he needs to fulfill his destiny. While love and care are vital, they alone are not enough to sustain a relationship if they do not support or align with his greater mission. A woman may pour her heart into a man, but if her actions, desires, or life path conflict with the direction he feels called to pursue, he may feel torn and ultimately choose his purpose over the relationship. This does not diminish the woman's value or the sincerity of her care. Instead, it highlights the importance of compatibility, not just in personality, but in vision and direction. When two people are walking together, they must agree on the destination, or they will find themselves pulling each other in opposite directions. A man who is deeply connected to his purpose will prioritize it above all else, not out of selfishness, but out of a deep conviction that his purpose is tied to his very existence. It is also worth noting that some men may not yet fully understand their purpose, but they sense when something feels misaligned. This internal conflict can cause them to pull away, even if they cannot articulate the reasons why. In such cases, it is not the lack of care from the woman that pushes them away, but the unshakable feeling that the relationship is not in harmony with the future they envision. For a relationship to thrive, both partners must support and uplift each other's purpose. The woman's care becomes truly impactful when it is channeled toward helping him fulfill his calling, just as his love and leadership must nurture her purpose in return. Alignment and purpose creates a bond that is not only emotional but also foundational, a bond that allows two people to walk together in strength, unity, and shared destiny. Without this alignment, even the deepest care can feel misplaced, leaving both individuals unfulfilled. Respect is the cornerstone of a man's identity, the foundation upon which he builds his sense of self-worth and purpose. While love nurtures the heart, respect fuels the soul. A man will often value respect even above affection because it speaks directly to his need for honor, dignity, and affirmation. Without respect, a man may feel diminished no matter how much care or love he receives. Respect is not merely about words or actions, it is an attitude that reflects how a man is perceived and valued. When a woman respects a man, she acknowledges his strengths, his efforts, and his unique contributions. She communicates that he is seen, heard, and esteemed not for perfection, but for his inherent value in the roles he fulfills. This kind of respect reinforces his confidence, empowering him to take on the challenges of life with boldness and determination. However, when a man perceives a lack of respect, it strikes at the core of his being. He may feel unappreciated, belittled, or even rejected, and this can lead to frustration, withdrawal, or resentment. This is not because he is fragile or overly sensitive, but because respect is tied to his innate need for significance. A man thrives when he knows that his efforts are acknowledged, his decisions are valued, and his presence is appreciated. Respect also shapes how a man interacts in the relationship. When he feels respected, he is more likely to respond with love, care, and commitment. It creates an environment where he feels safe to be vulnerable and open, knowing that his flaws will not be used against him and his strengths will be celebrated. Respect allows him to lead without feeling domineering and to support without feeling inadequate. On the other hand, subtle actions or words that convey disrespect can erode the foundation of a relationship. Criticism that undermines his abilities, comparisons that diminish his worth, or attitudes that disregard his contributions can have a lasting impact. Even well-intentioned actions, if perceived as dismissive or controlling, can create barriers between a man and the woman who cares for him. True respect is not about blind agreement or ignoring faults. It is about recognizing a man's intrinsic value and choosing to honor it, even in moments of disagreement. It is about fostering an atmosphere where he feels empowered to grow, lead, and contribute, not out of obligation, but out of a sense of purpose and partnership. Respect is the language that speaks directly to a man's heart, and without it, even the most caring relationship can struggle to find its footing. A man's emotional world is often more complex than it appears on the surface. Just as much as he values respect, a man also longs for emotional connection, a place where his feelings, thoughts, and vulnerabilities are acknowledged and understood. Men by nature do not always express their emotions freely or overtly. They tend to internalize their struggles, often believing that showing emotional weakness will diminish their strength or image. Yet beneath this guarded exterior lies a deep need for emotional security, a safe space where they can be fully accepted, flaws and all. When a man feels emotionally disconnected from the woman who cares for him, it can lead to feelings of isolation and even confusion. He may not always express it in words, but the absence of emotional validation creates a distance that nothing else can bridge. The care he receives may be tangible, even overwhelming, but without emotional connection, it feels hollow. It is as if a critical part of him is not being seen. He may long for deeper conversations, for her to intuitively understand his moods, his silent struggles, and the weight he carries, even when he cannot find the words to share them. The emotional disconnection is not a matter of lack of love or care, but rather a lack of resonance between the hearts. A man needs a woman who can not only offer affection, but also a deep emotional understanding. This understanding is not about fixing his problems or offering solutions, but about being present, listening without judgment, and showing compassion. When a woman listens intently, when she truly hears the unspoken words, a man feels valued on a level that goes beyond the physical and the practical. It affirms that his emotions, even the ones he struggles to express, are significant. It gives him the freedom to be vulnerable and open, knowing he won't be judged or dismissed. On the other hand, if a man's emotional needs go unrecognized, if his silence is misinterpreted as indifference, or his moments of vulnerability are met with criticism or neglect, he will begin to pull away. The emotional void created by this disconnection is difficult to fill with anything else. He may continue to care for the woman, but he will struggle to fully invest himself in the relationship. The woman's care may become overshadowed by the unspoken emotional rift, and he may eventually seek a place, even subconsciously, where his emotional world is better understood. Emotional connection is the bridge that unites two people beyond the physical realm. It is in the emotional intimacy that true closeness is formed. A man who feels emotionally connected to his partner will rise to the occasion, eager to protect, support, and contribute to the relationship. He will work to nurture the emotional bond because he knows that in doing so, he nurtures both of them. However, when that connection falters, it can create a sense of longing and emptiness, even in the midst of care and affection. Emotional intimacy requires more than just presence. It requires deep empathy, trust, and a willingness to be vulnerable with one another. Growth is a fundamental necessity for any thriving relationship. Just as individuals grow and evolve in their own lives, a relationship must also experience continuous development. When two people come together, they bring their individual histories, desires, and dreams. In a healthy relationship, these elements should not only coexist, but also fuel each other's growth. A man by nature needs to feel that he is progressing, not just in his career or personal achievements, but within the relationship itself. If a man senses that the relationship has become stagnant, that it no longer challenges him to grow or evolve, it will inevitably lead to dissatisfaction. A relationship that does not encourage growth is a relationship that confines. A man who feels trapped in routines, old patterns, and unfulfilled potential will begin to question the value of his emotional investment. When growth is absent, a relationship can feel more like a weight than a source of strength. It is not that the man does not care for the woman, but that he needs more than comfort and familiarity. He needs the stimulation of progress. This is a deeply rooted part of his nature. He is driven by the desire to reach new heights, to push beyond his limits, and to see results that confirm his efforts. If this drive is stifled within the relationship, he will find himself emotionally disengaged, looking for opportunities outside the partnership that offer the challenge and growth he craves. Furthermore, growth is not just about external accomplishments. It is about internal development, the growth of the soul, the mind, and the heart. A man needs to feel that he is becoming a better version of himself, and this often occurs through the reflection and interaction with his partner. The greatest growth happens when both individuals are open to learning, forgiving, and evolving together. But if one person is stagnant, resistant to change, or unwilling to take the relationship to the next level, it creates a disconnect. The energy of the relationship, which once fueled their connection, becomes drained. A man may feel that he is pouring more into the relationship than he is receiving in terms of growth and inspiration, and this imbalance can lead him to withdraw. The need for growth also extends to the emotional and spiritual aspects of the relationship. If a man is not growing emotionally, if his fears and insecurities are not being addressed or understood, he will carry a heavy burden. He may remain physically present but emotionally distant because the relationship is no longer helping him become the person he is meant to be. In a thriving relationship, growth is mutual. Each person encourages the other to dream bigger, to confront their limitations, and to rise above their past. Without this, a man may begin to feel that his potential is being wasted, and he will seek to fulfill it elsewhere. Growth also requires vision. A relationship without vision can feel aimless, drifting from day to day without clear direction. A man who has a vision for his life needs a woman who shares in that vision, who understands where he is going and is willing to support and contribute to that journey. When a relationship is anchored in shared goals and mutual aspirations, it becomes a powerful force for transformation. But when the vision is unclear or absent, both partners may feel lost and unmotivated. A man needs to know that the relationship is leading somewhere, that together they are building something greater than the sum of their individual parts. The absence of growth is not just a neutral state, it is a form of decay. It is like a plant deprived of sunlight and water, which will wither and eventually die. For a relationship to flourish, both partners must be committed to growth, not only in their individual lives, but in the life they build together. A man who senses this kind of growth in the relationship will feel energized, motivated, and deeply connected. However, if growth stagnates, he will begin to question whether the relationship is truly helping him become who he is meant to be. A man's need for freedom is not a reflection of selfishness or a lack of commitment. It is an essential part of his nature. Freedom in this context is not simply the absence of constraints, but the ability to express his individuality, to pursue his own dreams, and to grow without feeling confined. It is the space to breathe, to explore, and to evolve. A man who is deeply connected to his own identity needs room to move, to make decisions, and to shape his own future. This freedom is foundational to his sense of self. When that freedom feels threatened, when a relationship starts to feel more like a trap than a partnership, a man will begin to retreat, often without fully understanding why. When a relationship begins to feel controlling, a man will instinctively pull back. This is not because he does not care for the woman or does not value her, but because he feels that his autonomy, the very essence of who he is being compromised. Control comes in many forms. It may be subtle, such as constant criticism or unsolicited advice, or more overt, like attempts to dictate how he spends his time, what he believes, or who he associates with. Regardless of how it manifests, control chips away at a man's sense of freedom and individuality, and over time, this erosion leads to resentment. For a man, freedom is not just about doing whatever he wants, it is about having the space to make choices that align with his values, beliefs, and purpose. When he feels controlled, he feels as though his decisions no longer belong to him. He may begin to feel that every step he takes is scrutinized, that every decision is questioned, and that his very existence is being shaped by someone else's will. This feeling of being trapped stifles his spirit and undermines his ability to contribute to the relationship in a healthy, balanced way. The desire for freedom also ties into a deeper psychological need, the need for self-determination. A man must feel that he has control over his own life, that his actions are guided by his own choices and not the imposition of others. Even in a loving relationship, this need for self-determination must be honored. A relationship that respects a man's need for freedom does not seek to dominate, but rather to support his individual journey while walking alongside him. It allows him to be himself, to make mistakes, to learn and to grow without fear of judgment or restriction. When a man is free to express himself fully without fear of reprisal or control, he feels empowered to be his best version. However, when that freedom is taken away or threatened, it creates a tension that becomes difficult to ignore. A man may not immediately articulate why he feels stifled, but he will begin to distance himself both emotionally and physically. This is not an act of defiance or rebellion, but a desperate attempt to regain a sense of autonomy. He will search for ways to reconnect with his sense of self, and in doing so, he may pull away from the very relationship that once felt nurturing. It is also important to recognize that freedom within a relationship is not about absence or neglect, it is about balance. A man needs to feel supported, loved, and respected within the relationship, but he also needs the ability to pursue his own goals, passions, and aspirations. The healthiest relationships are those where both partners can maintain their individual identities while sharing a collective vision. There is mutual respect for each other's independence, which allows them to contribute to the relationship as whole individuals rather than as codependent entities. When a relationship allows a man to retain his freedom, it nurtures his growth and strengthens his commitment. But when a relationship becomes too possessive or controlling, it creates an environment where a man feels stifled, unable to fully express himself or pursue his calling. The loss of freedom is not just a small issue, it is a deep violation of his identity, and it is one that can lead him to leave, not because he does not care for the woman, but because he must preserve his sense of self. Freedom in its truest form is a gift to the relationship itself, for it is in the space of autonomy that love, respect, and partnership can flourish. Every man has an internal need to feel valued, and this sense of value is often shaped by the contributions he makes in life, whether it is in his career, in his personal endeavors, or within the context of his relationships. A man derives his sense of worth from the impact he has on others and the world around him. To feel like he is making a difference is to feel alive, to feel that his efforts are not only recognized but appreciated is a deep affirmation of his value as an individual. However, when a man begins to feel that his contributions are taken for granted or that his efforts go unnoticed, a sense of dissatisfaction begins to take root within him. This dissatisfaction does not stem from a desire for external validation alone, but from the deep innate need for affirmation and recognition. The value of a man is not solely tied to his accomplishments, but to the fact that he needs to know that the people he cares about see him for who he truly is. When a man gives his time, energy, and resources to a relationship, he expects in return a certain level of appreciation. It is not about seeking praise or being placed on a pedestal, but about having his efforts acknowledged as meaningful. If he feels that his contributions are either ignored or unappreciated, this can begin to erode his emotional connection to the woman he is with. The problem often arises when this value becomes linked to his ability to produce or perform. A man needs to feel that he is valued as a person, not merely for what he does, but for who he is. If he begins to feel that he is only loved or respected for what he provides or achieves, the relationship becomes transactional rather than relational. The deeper emotional connection, which should be built on mutual respect and admiration, becomes replaced by a sense of obligation or expectation. This can create a chasm between the man and his partner, for he feels that his essence, his heart, his soul is not truly seen. Recognizing a man's value goes beyond simply acknowledging the work he puts in. It involves seeing his inner strengths, his character, and his potential. It is recognizing the qualities within him that are not immediately visible on the surface: his integrity, his compassion, and his resilience. When a woman acknowledges not just the external aspects of his life, but the core of who he is, it communicates a deep sense of respect and appreciation. This recognition makes him feel whole, seen, and understood. It gives him the confidence to continue striving, to continue pursuing his purpose, because he knows that his efforts matter not only to the world at large, but to the person who is closest to him. But when that recognition is absent, a man's spirit begins to wane. He may continue to perform out of duty, but his heart is no longer fully engaged. His energy and motivation begin to dwindle, and he may seek validation elsewhere, not out of a desire to hurt or abandon the woman, but out of an instinctive need to regain his sense of worth. The emotional withdrawal is not a rejection of the woman, but a retreat into himself, where he hopes to rediscover the affirmation he so desperately needs. Acknowledging a man's value is not just about offering compliments or praise. It is about being present, attentive, and aware of the sacrifices he makes and the strength he embodies. It is about understanding that the essence of who he is cannot be measured by what he does for others, but by the heart he puts into it. When a man feels truly valued, he is more than willing to give of himself, to invest in the relationship, and to support his partner in every way. The power of recognition lies in its ability to nourish the soul, to affirm the individual, and to strengthen the bond between two people. Without this recognition, the relationship begins to feel one-sided, and the man may begin to withdraw. Not because of a lack of love, but because of a deep, unspoken need for affirmation that has gone unmet. A man's desire for peace and stability in his environment is one of the most deeply rooted needs within him. Peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of harmony, balance, and order. It is the inner stillness that allows him to think clearly, make decisions confidently, and move forward without being weighed down by unnecessary turmoil. For a man, peace is the foundation upon which his emotional well-being and sense of purpose are built. When this peace is disrupted, whether by constant conflict, drama, or chaos, he finds it difficult to focus on his goals, his dreams, and the future. The peace he longs for is not an escape from responsibility or a desire to avoid the challenges of life, but rather a space where he can operate from a place of clarity and strength. When a man is in a relationship, he expects this peace to be nurtured and protected. It is in this peaceful environment that he finds the motivation to give his best, to work hard, and to contribute to the relationship in meaningful ways. Peace allows him to relax, to be himself without the fear of constant judgment, criticism, or unnecessary drama. It is within this peace that trust can grow, that love can deepen, and that the foundation of the relationship can be solidified. But when peace is consistently disturbed, when the relationship is marked by constant arguments, emotional manipulation, or drama, it creates an environment of tension that eats away at a man's energy, his focus, and his ability to invest emotionally. Conflict, while a natural part of any relationship, becomes destructive when it is constant, unresolved, or escalated unnecessarily. A man is not afraid of addressing challenges or facing difficult conversations, but when every interaction feels like a battle, it takes a toll on his spirit. He begins to question whether the relationship is a source of strength or a drain on his emotional resources. When he is constantly in a state of emotional turbulence, trying to navigate the ups and downs of the relationship, his sense of peace diminishes, and with it, his capacity to engage fully in the relationship. He may feel as though no matter what he does, peace is always just out of reach. Peace in a relationship also means having mutual respect for each other's emotional needs. A man needs to feel that his boundaries are honored, that his voice is heard, and that his voice is heard, and that his need for calm and quiet moments is respected. He needs space to process his thoughts, to reflect on his decisions, and to restore his emotional equilibrium. When this need is not recognized, when a woman expects him to constantly be engaged in the emotional storm or to respond immediately to every emotional upheaval, he begins to feel as though he is walking on eggshells, afraid that any misstep will lead to more conflict. This creates a sense of frustration and emotional fatigue. He may retreat emotionally or physically, not out of anger or rejection, but out of a desperate need to restore his inner peace. For a man, peace is not only about avoiding conflict, but about cultivating an environment where he feels understood, supported, and respected. It is in this peaceful space that he is able to show up as his best self, to offer love, care, and commitment without the burden of constant emotional distress. He is free to give his best because he is not constantly battling against the tide of turmoil. When peace is present, a man is energized, engaged, and fully invested in the relationship. However, when peace is absent, he becomes drained, disillusioned, and emotionally disconnected. Furthermore, peace is not just about the absence of external conflict, it is about internal peace as well. A man must have the internal capacity to maintain his calm in the face of adversity. If he is constantly forced to defend himself emotionally, or if the relationship triggers his insecurities and fears, he begins to lose his internal peace. When this peace is lost, he may struggle to make decisions, to lead, or to function at his highest level. Without peace, his mind is clouded, his heart is burdened, and his spirit is weakened. A relationship that fosters peace is one where both individuals feel safe to be vulnerable, to express themselves openly, and to work through their differences in a constructive way. It is not about avoiding challenges, but about facing them together with a shared commitment to resolution and understanding. When a man feels that peace is a constant in the relationship, he will thrive. He will give of himself freely, knowing that his emotional needs are being met, that his boundaries are respected, and that his spirit is nurtured. But when peace is absent, he will begin to retreat, feeling as though he cannot breathe, unable to fully invest in the relationship, and seeking peace elsewhere, not out of desire to leave, but out of a deep need to restore his emotional balance. A man's emotional well-being is deeply tied to the respect he feels he deserves in a relationship. Respect is not simply about treating someone well or adhering to social norms. It is about recognizing the inherent value of the individual, acknowledging their worth, and honoring their identity. For a man, being respected means being seen for who he truly is, not just for what he does or what he can provide. It means being appreciated for his character, his integrity, and his vision. When a man is not respected, especially in the context of a relationship, it shakes the very foundation of his identity. This lack of respect can be subtle or overt, but its effects are always profound. Over time, it erodes his self-esteem and can lead to feelings of resentment, disillusionment, and emotional withdrawal. Respect is the cornerstone of any healthy relationship. Without it, trust falters, communication breaks down, and the emotional connection begins to fray. When a man feels disrespected, he may begin to withdraw emotionally. This withdrawal is not always about anger or defiance, but about self-preservation. The more disrespected he feels, the more he pulls back from giving of himself. He begins to guard his heart and his emotions because he senses that they are not being valued. When a man feels that his thoughts, opinions, and feelings are dismissed or belittled, he begins to question his role in the relationship. He may wonder if he is truly appreciated or if his presence is merely tolerated. This can lead to a deep sense of isolation, even in the midst of a relationship. Respect also involves recognizing a man's autonomy, the space he needs to be himself, to make his own decisions and to pursue his purpose without fear of judgment or control. When respect is present, there is an understanding that both individuals are unique with their own strengths, weaknesses, and aspirations. A man does not want to feel as though he is being micromanaged or constantly questioned about his choices. He wants to feel that he is trusted to lead in his own way, to make decisions that align with his values, and to pursue his goals without undue interference. When this trust and respect are absent, a man may begin to feel suffocated, as though his every move is under scrutiny, and this can lead to resentment. Moreover, a man needs respect not only in the moments of calm and stability, but especially during times of struggle or conflict. When a disagreement arises, how a woman speaks to him, how she addresses his mistakes, and how she handles the tension is a reflection of the respect she holds for him. Respect in conflict means treating each other with dignity even when emotions run high. It means listening without judgment, speaking without condescension, and working together to resolve differences. If a man feels that during difficult times his partner disrespects him, whether through harsh words, belittling behavior, or disregarding his feelings, he feels emotionally wounded. And this wound can linger long after the conflict is over. The lack of respect can also manifest in the way a man's boundaries are treated. A man needs to feel that his personal boundaries, whether they are emotional, mental, or physical, are respected and upheld. When those boundaries are ignored or disrespected, he feels that his identity and his needs are secondary to those of the other person. Over time, this causes frustration and disconnection. He may begin to feel like he is always sacrificing, always giving without receiving the same in return, and this imbalance leads him to question whether the relationship is truly fulfilling or if it is simply taking more than it gives. Respect also ties into the recognition of a man's contributions. Whether it is his work, his efforts at home, or the emotional labor he puts into the relationship, when his contributions are overlooked or undervalued, it diminishes his sense of self-worth. He may begin to feel like he is giving everything without receiving the acknowledgement or gratitude he needs. This creates an emotional void, a sense of emptiness that nothing can fill. It leads to frustration and disappointment because no matter how hard he works, it feels as though it is never enough. This emotional depletion can lead him to seek validation and appreciation elsewhere, not out of a lack of love, but because he needs to feel value for his efforts. The absence of respect in a relationship undermines the very essence of what makes the connection meaningful. It creates an environment of insecurity, doubt, and emotional disconnection. For a man, respect is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the recognition of his inherent worth, the acknowledgement of his efforts, and the honoring of his individuality. When respect is consistently present in a relationship, a man feels supported, understood, and valued. He is able to give freely, to invest emotionally, and to show up as his best self. But when respect is absent, he begins to retreat emotionally, pulling away from the relationship to protect his sense of dignity and self-worth. The lack of respect is not just an emotional wound, it is a deep violation of his identity, one that over time will lead him to disconnect and ultimately walk away. A man's sense of purpose is deeply ingrained in his identity. It is the driving force behind every decision, every action, and every aspiration he has in life. Purpose is not just about what he does for a living or the role he plays in a relationship, but about understanding why he exists, what he is meant to contribute to the world, and how he wants to leave his mark on the lives of others. For a man, discovering his purpose is one of the most critical journeys of his life. It is the light that guides him through the darkest moments, the fuel that keeps him going when times get tough, and the motivation that propels him to continue striving no matter the obstacles in his path. When a man feels that his purpose is unclear or unappreciated, it creates a deep internal unrest. A sense of direction is lost, and with it, his drive to move forward begins to wane. Purpose provides meaning to every effort he exerts. Without it, he begins to question the significance of his actions, his choices, and his very existence. This lack of purpose is not just an intellectual or philosophical issue, it is an emotional and spiritual crisis. It strikes at the core of who he is, leaving him feeling unfulfilled, disconnected, and adrift. In a relationship, if a woman does not understand or support a man's sense of purpose, it can cause him to feel as though his journey is being undermined, and this can lead to emotional withdrawal. A man needs to feel that the person he is with respects his purpose, understands his ambitions, and encourages him to pursue his dreams. This support is not about being constantly present for every task or helping him achieve every goal, but rather about creating an environment where he feels free to chase his vision. It means standing by him in his pursuit, even when the road gets tough, and celebrating his milestones along the way. When a woman acknowledges the importance of his purpose in shaping who he is, she becomes a source of strength, providing him with the emotional support and encouragement he needs to stay the course. She helps him navigate the doubts, fears, and challenges that arise when pursuing something larger than himself. But when a man feels that his purpose is misunderstood or belittled, it creates a significant rift in the relationship. This is not just about external success, it is about the internal need to feel that his work, his passion, and his mission in life are seen and valued. If he is met with indifference, criticism, or even worse, a lack of belief in his potential, he begins to question not only his ability to succeed, but also the value of the relationship itself. How can he be fully present if he feels that the woman he loves does not see the significance of his journey? How can he give of himself emotionally if his life's work is constantly dismissed or disregarded? A man who is constantly faced with doubt, negativity, or indifference regarding his purpose begins to lose his drive. He may start to feel that no matter how hard he tries, no one understands the weight of his aspirations, or worse, that no one cares about his dreams. This creates a sense of isolation, a feeling that even in the midst of a relationship, he is alone in his pursuit. He may withdraw emotionally or physically from the relationship as he seeks validation elsewhere. This withdrawal is not out of a lack of love, but out of a deep internal need to reconnect with his purpose and find people who genuinely support him. The way a man connects to his purpose also affects his sense of confidence. A man who is aligned with his purpose carries an inner assurance that drives his actions and interactions. This confidence radiates outward, influencing every part of his life, including his relationship. When he feels aligned with his purpose, he is emotionally available, engaged, and present. He is not merely existing, he is living with intention, and this intentionality gives him a sense of fulfillment that affects every area of his life. But when that connection to his purpose is threatened or disregarded, his confidence begins to erode. He becomes less certain, more withdrawn, and unsure of himself. This lack of confidence translates into a diminished ability to contribute to the relationship, to communicate effectively, or to engage fully with his partner. Furthermore, a man's purpose is not only about achieving success or material gains, it is also about leaving a legacy. The desire to create a meaningful life that impacts others is deeply embedded in the heart of every man. He wants to know that his life matters, that his efforts have made a difference, and that he has contributed something lasting to the world. When a man's purpose is recognized and supported, it fuels his desire to give more, to be more, and to create more. But when it is dismissed or undermined, it dims his vision of the future. It makes him question whether he is capable of achieving the legacy he desires or if it is even worth pursuing at all. This sense of futility can be devastating. In a relationship, it is essential that both individuals understand the importance of each other's purpose. When a woman supports a man's mission, she becomes his greatest ally, providing the emotional, mental, and spiritual reinforcement needed to keep going. She encourages him to stay focused, reminds him of his value, and helps him stay connected to his vision. In return, the man becomes more invested in the relationship because he knows that his partner believes in him and his purpose. There is a deep sense of unity that forms when both individuals are aligned with their personal missions and are able to support each other's growth and aspirations. But when a man's purpose is met with disregard or misunderstanding, the emotional disconnect deepens. He may not be able to articulate why he feels distant or unfulfilled, but deep within, he knows that something important is missing. His pursuit of purpose is not just a personal ambition, it is part of his very essence. When it is stifled or ignored, it leaves him feeling unanchored, unsure, and emotionally distant. A man who feels unsupported in his journey toward his purpose will eventually walk away, not because he doesn't love, but because his identity, his mission, and his sense of self-worth are being threatened. A man's emotional capacity is intricately tied to his ability to invest in a relationship. Emotionally, a man is not a simple vessel to be filled by love or affection. He is a complex being who seeks to give, to contribute, and to pour out of himself in meaningful ways. He has a deep-seated need to nurture, to protect, and to build with the person he loves. But this emotional investment is not automatic. It must be earned, it must be nurtured, and it must be supported by a relationship that allows him to feel safe enough to open his heart. The willingness of a man to emotionally invest is often directly correlated with the trust, respect, and security he feels within that relationship. When he senses that his emotional investments are not reciprocated, valued, or respected, it creates a distance that becomes difficult to bridge. A man's emotional investments are not always immediately visible, and they are not always expressed in conventional ways. While women may often express their emotions verbally or through physical affection, a man's emotional investments often manifest in actions, in his willingness to sacrifice, and in the way he consistently shows up for the relationship. These investments may not always be dramatic or overt, but they are deeply rooted in his desire to contribute meaningfully to the partnership. He may give his time, his energy, his resources, and his mental capacity to building something that is sustainable, that brings both partners joy, and that creates a future they can both share. However, when a man feels that these emotional investments are ignored, unappreciated, or taken for granted, his spirit begins to withdraw. One of the most painful experiences for a man in a relationship is to give emotionally without receiving the same level of care or attention in return. This imbalance creates a sense of depletion, a feeling that he is pouring from an empty cup. In these moments, he begins to question whether the effort he is putting into the relationship is truly worth it. The emotional withdrawal is not driven by a lack of love, but by the fact that he feels emotionally drained and unsupported. The constant giving without receiving can lead him to feel unnoticed or insignificant, as though his contributions are being taken for granted. He begins to question his own value in the relationship, and over time, this emotional depletion leads to frustration, anger, and a sense of hopelessness. For a man, emotional investment is not just about grand gestures or constant affection. It is about knowing that his emotional needs are being met and that his vulnerabilities are being acknowledged. When he shares his heart, his fears, or his dreams with his partner, he wants to feel that those emotions are handled with care and respect. If his emotions are dismissed, belittled, or misunderstood, it creates a feeling of emotional isolation. He begins to close off, not because he no longer cares, but because he no longer feels safe to share. In these moments, a man may begin to withdraw from emotional intimacy, even if his physical presence remains. The emotional connection begins to fade, and the relationship begins to feel more like a transaction rather than a partnership. Additionally, a man's emotional capacity is directly linked to the emotional climate of the relationship. He thrives in an environment that fosters open communication, mutual understanding, and a balance of emotional give and take. When there is consistent emotional turmoil, unpredictability, or manipulation, it creates a constant state of stress that diminishes his ability to invest emotionally. The emotional chaos erodes his trust and security, which are critical to his engagement in the relationship. He feels as though he is walking on eggshells, unsure of what to say or do to avoid triggering another emotional storm. Over time, the toll this takes on his mental and emotional well-being can become unbearable, and he may find himself unable to engage in a meaningful way. A relationship that encourages emotional investment is one that fosters an atmosphere of trust, where both partners can express their feelings without fear of judgment or criticism. For a man to feel emotionally connected, he needs to know that his partner values his emotional expression and that she is willing to meet him in that space. This means acknowledging his feelings, validating his experiences, and offering emotional support in times of need. When this is absent, it creates a sense of loneliness within the relationship, a feeling that no matter how much he gives, he is not truly seen or heard. At the same time, a man's emotional investment is also linked to the emotional health of the relationship as a whole. If there is no shared vision, no sense of mutual respect, or no understanding of each other's needs, a man's emotional contributions begin to feel futile. He wants to invest in a relationship that has a purpose, a direction, and a sense of mutual growth. He wants to see that his emotional energy is being used to build something greater than the sum of its parts, something that elevates both partners and fosters long-term happiness. When he does not see that there is a shared vision or a common goal, he feels as though his emotional investments are being wasted. And this leads to disillusionment. Furthermore, a man's emotional investment is deeply tied to his sense of identity. His emotions are often connected to his role in relationship, whether he is seen as a provider, protector, confidant, or partner. When he invests emotionally and that role is unacknowledged or undermined, it creates a fracture in his self-perception. He begins to doubt whether he is fulfilling his purpose within the relationship. The lack of validation for his emotional efforts can leave him feeling inadequate, disconnected, and unsure of where he fits within the dynamic of the relationship. A man who feels emotionally unfulfilled will eventually disengage, not because he does not care, but because the weight of emotional imbalance becomes too much to bear. He may withdraw into himself, looking for ways to restore his emotional health, seeking validation elsewhere, or even ending the relationship altogether. Emotional investment is not something that can be sustained indefinitely without reciprocity. A man's desire to give emotionally is a reflection of his love and commitment, but when that commitment is not met with the same level of care, he will begin to pull away. Protecting his emotional well-being and ultimately seeking peace and fulfillment in a relationship where his emotional investments are valued and reciprocated. Understanding why a man might leave a woman who cares deeply for him is not about blaming one party over the other. It's about uncovering the layers of human needs, purpose, and connection. True love is not just about care, but about respect, alignment, and mutual growth. When both partners commit to these principles, they create a foundation that no storm can shake. Let this be a call to deeper understanding, not only of others, but of yourself. For in understanding there is power, and in power there is transformation.